Thanks for listening to the Clive Barker Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to the works and worlds of Clive Barker. This is episode 149 with David, Jose, and me, Ryan, talking about issues 1 through 6 of the Marvel epic Nightbreed comics. If you have them, give them a read before listening and join in on the conversation. I'm Ryan, and we've got Jose.
Hello.
And David.
Hello.
And we're talking about the Nightbreed epic comic series from Marvel Epic. Not the most current ones, but the ones from 1990 through 92, I think.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think issue number 1 came out in April of 1990.
Yeah. Yeah, so we're kind of going to just be going through those and talking about some nuances. And actually, revisiting these is really neat after having seen the Cabal cut a few times and the director's cut. It puts a whole new light on these comics, which is going to be interesting to talk about.
For example, I mean, the writers Alan Grant and John Wagner kind of wrote some of these comics, but they were based on screenplay by Clive Barker. So I have a feeling that they came up with these comic books. When did Nightbreed premiere? Let me just look here real quick.
I think it was like March of
1990. Well,
yeah.
These comic books came out in April of 1990, so it's fair to say that probably they were working on this before the movie came out, which you can tell because some things are different here than the movie, and it's closer to the book Cabal, as we will talk further ahead.
And you can tell as the series progresses, they sort of started molding the characters to look more like the movie characters, and gradually sort of like Peliquin is a really big one, and Boone and Laurie even in this first issue don't look exactly like their movie characters.
Well, yeah, because especially with comics, I know they typically have a 3 to 4 month lead time on there in order to be able to get their prints on time. So yeah, they're probably well into production on this film when they actually started cobbling the script and the art together.
That's right, and some of these monsters that we see in these books, they're a little different, but others are just like the movie, which makes me believe that at some point they started getting more feedback from Clive Barker's people and the production company, because you'll get to see here, like Peliquin is different, like Ryan said, but in some pages and panels you see characters like Vasti Moses, and even that weird manta ray that splits into 3 different creatures, into 3 parts, the flying manta ray.
Yeah.
So it's fair to say that those things were totally created for the movie and they made it to the comics. So, yeah, it's weird. And there's going to be a few differences here. So the first 4 issues basically they encapsulate the movie, okay, the story of the novel, I should say. Well, that's the first 4 issues.
Another strange thing is, there are characters that were in the reshoots that never made it into these comics at all. Like Shuna Sassy is a big one. And
yeah,
and the John Agar character, no town, just a cemetery.
Yeah, he's not here.
Yeah,
no,
he's not in this comic at all either. Which makes sense because in the comic book, again, there was a town of Midian, the ghost town, just like in the book Cabal. But in the movie, there's no town. I think probably for budgetary reasons.
Good points. So, like I said, Alan Grant and John Wagner worked on this, and they worked a lot on Judge Dredd comic books and Batman and stuff like that. So, actually, John Wagner was creator of Judge Dredd for AD 2000. Mm-hmm. So here they adapted the script that they were given for comic book form. And here's where something really fascinating shows up. I was looking at my drafts of Nightbreed, the script. And I do have a first draft from Clive Barker. It's from 12th September 1988. I have a Nightbreed revised draft of from December 1988 with revisions from June of 89. And I have a third draft of Nightbreed, which is the most interesting one here, because this draft had a revision by Mark Frost. And I guess you guys may remember this name from X-Files and Twin Peaks. So it's really weird to hear that there was a revision of this script by Mark Frost, but there is one. It's titled First Draft, November 28, 1988. And it opens up pretty much like the issue number 1 of the comic book. It opens up at the Calgary Zoo, which is where this first issue opens. And from there on, there's lots of stuff that you will find in this Mark Frost script that are mirrored in the comic book. So I thought that was very strange, and I kind of went in and I noted down all the stuff that I could find parallels with the script, and it's definitely different and very fascinating read. So I guess we will be talking about that.
I think one major difference is this line that Boone says, "I'll never leave you." I mean, he says it like 4 times in the comic series. And I think in the second draft script he says it maybe 1 time, and then in the movie, in the theatrical movie, I don't think he ever said it at all.
Yeah.
I love the art by Jim Bakey. He's one of my favorite comic book artists. I own at least 3 pieces of original art from this comic book series. One of them is from issue number 3. It's the big 1-panel splash where Boone is I would say resting in his jail cell, but he's just been beaten up by Eigerman and his goons. Yeah. And I have 2 more pages from when Laurie enters the jail cell when they're rescuing Boone. I have 2 of those. And those 2. So I love comic book art, and definitely Jim Bakey is one of my favorite artists. So I think I have some pictures of that to share in the show notes. So if I find them, I'll put them there.
I thought it was really neat, in at least in issue 1, the way the sort of misdirection that they do. That Boone just kind of disappeared for the night, and Laurie's trying to get a hold of him, and then we see Decker, murdering the family, and Laurie's like, "Where were you?" He's like, "Oh, I was out." And it's obvious they're trying to set us up, at least for a little while, into believing that Boone's got this secret life as a serial killer.
Yeah. Classic misdirection there. Yeah. Also, in issue number 1, you see a part where Laurie confronts this guy called Niles, who calls Boone crazy.
Oh, yeah, the boyfriend.
Right. Piss off, Niles, and she slaps him. Yeah. That's from the Mark Frost script, actually. That's from that script. So all these things are going to pop up.
Steve Niles.
I don't know.
It's got to be. Yeah, I mean, he's a big-time comic collaborator with Clive Barker.
Sure. So that's one of the things. And I really like this adaptation because I wish the movie could have been more like this adaptation. It would have been more vibrant. I think the story flows better.
Well, the Cabal cut is very, very close.
Yes, it is. Yeah. That's a good point. You do get to see these extended scenes where, for example, issue 1, after the Rickmans get murdered, Inspector Joyce shows up, and there's that whole part where he's talking to the pathologist, I believe, or one of the cops, and he's talking. We can't
even protect the kids. What the hell good are we?
Right, and we can't even protect the kids. That's actually in the comic book, so that made it there, and now it's on the director's cut as well. So that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But Decker is a little different too. I mean, it's not obviously modeled after David Cronenberg. And one of the things I thought was interesting is Decker does hypnotize Boone during his sessions in the comic book adaptation.
Yeah, so he must have post-hypnotic suggestions to make him describe these murder scenes.
Right.
Yeah.
Which also kind of goes a little bit towards what the novel kind of implies there, when he's basically grooming Boone, convincing him over the course of maybe a couple of weeks or something, where he's going over the things that he's done, and he's trying to explain to him, you should go to the police. Actually, Clive Barker does telegraph that a little too much in the novel, because basically Decker kind of tells him all the details of all the crimes that happen, so he'll be able to tell the police all the details.
Right, yeah.
Right? And it's like anyone could see what was going on there. But
Boone's mixed up and kind of crazy. And I think... one thing I really liked is the scene where Boone gets shot out in front of the Midian cemetery, and Decker, he's sort of talking to Decker. I didn't kill everyone. And he says, "Of course you haven't. You wouldn't hurt. I know you wouldn't hurt a fly," which is lifted from Psycho, and then And then he says, wait a minute. And he remembered that Decker had given him a hallucinogen. He said, you set me up. That wasn't lithium. And then he punched Decker in the face, and then Decker says he's got a gun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Totally different from every version of the movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And shortly before that, you get to see Peliquin as this kind of reptilian creature, which is really how he's described in the novel.
Yeah.
Here, I guess
he's like a hybrid between the novel character and the movie character, because he's green, but he has those tentacles around his head like the movie, but he has a tail also.
But like you said, later in the series, they turned Peliquin to be more like the movie Peliquin.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, especially in that epic number 2 or whatever that we'll address in a future episode.
Yeah, right, exactly.
So one thing that I thought was really funny and kind of 90s comic book, and I'm not sure, maybe this might be in the Mark Frost script, but in the at the very beginning when they're at the aquarium and there's that really weird sex scene.
Yes,
right.
Of like the kids seeing it and everything.
Yeah.
That is from the Mark Frost scene. It says, I'll quote it to you right now. It says, they're going through the cave-like dark design where there's a hammerhead shark aquarium, and it says here, Boone hides from Laurie, and Laurie goes like, Boone, come on, this isn't funny. She turns a corner and comes face to face with a hammerhead shark hovering mesmerically on the other side of the display glass. She's fascinated and repelled. Boone jumps in behind her, kissing and attacking her neck. She's genuinely startled, which he enjoys, then genuinely angry, which he aggressively placates, during the course of which they both become aroused. He leads her around the glass into a darkened alcove, raising her short skirt. We see them through a drifting, darting tapestry of schoolfish, making love, their hushed whispers echoing faintly. And then it's like a teacher conducts a class of young high school children on a tour. And then, then the rest is embellishment from the comic book. It says they made the teacher a nun. And it's like, cover your eyes, children, cover your eyes. Oh, my God.
Avert your eyes.
Yeah, I imagine that if they would have filmed it, it would have had some really sassy saxophone playing over that.
Yeah.
Well, and that's just one of these sort of public exhibitions that they do. Right, because there's also the jail cell where Narcisse is like peeping at him through the little window.
The ending of the scene is, wearing sunglasses, Boone and Laurie, straight-faced, looking every bit the proper couple, walk past the teacher and a timid female guard, arm in arm towards the exit. And then Boone says, fascinating exhibit, and Laurie says, smashing. So, blame Mark Frost for this one, although I think it's a pretty funny one. And
it is.
Humor was not outside of the script, the early drafts of the Nightbreed script. I mean, there's one where during the Midian attack, this was never filmed, but during the Midian attack, there's one of the posse from the Sons of the Free who actually hooks up with a blonde with big boobies inside a car.
Right.
Just before Eigerman shows up and says, give me a weapon, and then the berserkers come. And the redneck, the Son of the Free, was supposed to be making love with the blonde inside the car while everybody's just running around and shooting.
Yeah.
And, it's from one of the early drafts. So humor was totally not out of the table when they made this movie, first draft.
I think we were sorely lacking, in the theatrical cut, we were sorely lacking any kind of connection between Boone and Laurie. I mean, it was all chopped out.
Yeah, you basically just had to assume while watching it.
Yeah, we didn't even know what either one of them did for a living.
Sure. Yeah. And one of the first drafts of Nightbreed does start with Boone working as a welder, and then that garage thing. So yes, but Boone and Laurie are different characters in every adaptation of the novel than the novel, because in the novel they were really broken people. I mean, Laurie is a very mousy, timid woman whose story arc takes her into becoming, the strong, transcending character that she is at the end. And Boone was super problematic. I mean, he would go weeks without showering. Their relationship was really very dependent. Like, they would go months without ever touching each other and stuff. And that doesn't translate into the adaptations, I guess, because it would be hard to identify a little bit with the characters if they were that problematic. I mean, in the book it's different because you have a lot more time to engage with the characters and see their story arc. But of course, in a shorter adaptation, it has to be like, they have to be more colorful characters, more interesting.
Yeah. You don't have time to sit with them and get to know them.
Right.
Well, one nice thing about the comics is you also have these Blade Runner style, monologues from the points of view of first Boone and then Laurie, and then I think also Decker a little bit too in a later issue. I think number 3.
Yeah. Some other Mark Frost moments here are, for example, when Joyce is talking about after Boone was shot and he's being autopsied, and Joyce says to the pathologist, monsters, they don't look any different, do they, inside? And the pathologist says, maybe this one does. We'll see. I haven't cut him open yet.
Yeah.
And the assistant chimes in, still trying to get all the lead out.
Yeah.
That's from the Mark Frost script.
Yeah.
So there you go. And another thing that's worth mentioning is that in this comic book adaptation, Decker does speak to the mask, and he does bring up that the mask kind of forces him to do things, and he blames the mask for his actions. He says, it's the mask's fault. It's not me. So that's another thing that's been restored in the director's cut.
Yeah, in the Cabal cut that was restored. In the director's cut,
that's right.
They took it out. Yeah,
it
gets confusing after a while.
Right, right. But and there's even a 2-headed chicken man on issue number 2 that's also put in there.
Yeah, I like that guy.
Yeah, when Laurie is going through Midian in her search for Boone, who's gone to see Baphomet, she does come across a 2-headed chicken man. That's from the Mark Frost script. It's it's very strange.
Yeah.
See, he certainly added his quirky marks on that script.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. There's a lot of stuff here that comes from there, but most of it is pretty much the same. But yeah, I mean, Igerman is different as well in the comic book adaptation. He looks visually different. He's just a fat, balding, white hair, no glasses or mustache, a good old boy kind of sheriff.
Mm-hmm.
There's also a really different story beat with Igerman and his police that's in the comic versus in the Cabal and the director's cut. Because in the Cabal cut and the director's cut, they didn't realize that he was the same person that was killed in Midian. And until he sort of finds out at the press conference and looks like an idiot. And in the comics, they knew all along, and there's even like a line, one wrong move, freak, and you're back on the slab. When they catch him in the hotel in Sheerneck. Sure. Yeah, so they know all along that he was dead and on the coroner slab, which I don't know. I think it's a lot more interesting and kind of funny that when Igerman is like, wait a minute, is this that same guy? It's like, how could you not know that?
Right. Yeah. And gosh, you mentioned the shooting scene with Boone at the end of issue 1, and that scene is so bloody. I understand that is meant to be over the top, so for the sake of page composition. But his blood is spreading all over the floor. It's like he has
Decker too.
Yeah. There's a lot of blood there, but So there's a lot of stuff there that it's a little different. But nowadays, of course, with the director's cut, I think it's a good thing to return to this and experience it with the added scenes, even though some of these are from Mark Frost and they were never in the film. Mm-hmm. But for example, I mean, Lylesburg looks like it looks in the movie. Yeah. So obviously they had some insight from the movie.
Is really, really similar.
Yeah.
Yeah. There's a conversation in the comic book where someone says, I saw this guy, he looked like Mac tonight. So
yes.
Again, that is put in there.
What was the one really funny line in when Decker is turning he sees Laurie and Boone getting into the hotel, and he says he's calling the police, and he says he's wearing a buffalo hat, but I'm sure it's him.
Yeah,
that was his disguise. He grabbed one of those stupid Buffalo Days hats and put it on.
Yeah, that's a funny part. Cheryl Ann in the comic is also a little different. She's kind of a blondish, white-haired woman. Decker is also different, or I should say, Decker is different because he's not wearing a suit. Instead, they make him into a more like supervillain kind of thing, where he's got this trench coat full of swords on the inside, and he's got this like form-fitting T-shirt, and the mask. Even the mask looks a little different. It looks like it's made out of bandages or something.
And it kind of has like a frown to it as well, which is kind of creepy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I've seen a picture of an early design of Decker's mask. And for those of you who may have remembered the latest article about Simon Sassy's passing, he also helped design the Dr. Decker mask. Mm-hmm. But there was an early design that I've seen that the mouth was more lopsided to the left side, and there was a little bit of a wispy kind of hair coming off the top. It looked a little weird. It looked like an open mouth screaming with a zipper. Yeah, and there's a little wisp of hair. I'll see if I can find that picture because it's a little different looking Decker mask than the one we got in the movie. Mm-hmm. But, that there's always preliminary designs. I mean, there's one of Narcisse where after he removes his scalp, it's actually like green and scaly underneath. And there's a picture of you, Ross, with that sort of like makeup design. So maybe you can see that in the new Director's Cut 3 DVD or 3 Blu-ray set. I'm sure those pictures are in there somewhere. Hmm.
Sorry, I was just getting a text message. Or a phone call, and then I was trying to tell them that I am on a phone call already with a text message. Anyway, we'll cut all that out.
Well, one other thing that I really loved in the first issue, we were talking about the artwork and how you own some of the copies. Man, the murder scene at the beginning is shot so cinematically. It's that kind of took my breath away when I was reading it the first time because I had never read these up until just recently, and it was quite stunning to see how the panels flow together. It's very horror film.
Yeah, I agree, and especially when he's going up the stairs for the boy. Mm-hmm. There's this commentary on the little dialogue boxes where it says, let's see, we hear a commentary from Decker while he's throughout the whole scene. It says, suburban sunset, comfortable couple, and the kids, bless them, I love the kids. Yeah. And then he says, shakes them out of the rut, shows them there's more to life than television. People should know that. They live in a real world, a very real world. And he says, cold steel, sweet terror, real blood, real nightmares. And then when he goes up the stairs, it's like, real nice kids. And, it just gives you that goosebumpy because when he's going up the stairs, he's not only going up the stairs with a knife, he's dragging the corpse of the kid's father up the stairs with him. And that would have been a great addition to that scene.
Yeah.
Yeah, which was already really scary. One of the scariest scenes in the original movie.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And I love how you get that close-up of the kid's eye and you see Decker's mask, the button eye in his reflection.
Oh, yeah.
Powerful stuff. This was really adapted by people who knew exactly what they were doing. I mean, the people who had like the whole, people who worked in AD 2000 for years and years and years doing all these like amazing stories. Alan Grant, John Wagner. They both worked together for a long time. For almost 10 years, they were working together as a writing team. So, and of course, artist Jim Bakey. And the color is so vibrant throughout all these comic books; it really adds to the experience.
Yeah.
We were talking a little bit ago about Cheryl Ann. There was one interesting. There were a few like interesting little quirks that they took also that made a pretty different change. Like. There was one where Cheryl, they were at Midian, and she said, "Why the hell would Boone come all the way out here?" And Cheryl Ann says, "To get away from it all." And then Laurie's like, "Shut up, Cheryl Ann." in the movie, they really softened that with Cheryl Ann going, "Shut up, Cheryl Ann."
Oh, that's right. Good catch.
But it's like Laurie's, he's like, you just drove me all the way out here. She could be a little bit more polite, maybe. I mean, I know it's a difficult subject and everything, but...
Another thing that was restored to some extent in the Cabal cut, and I believe also in the director's cut, was the psychic link between Babette and Laurie.
Yeah.
Those sequences do show up in the comic book adaptation, even though in the movie that was totally cut out. The theatrical cut didn't have any of that.
And they took it out of the director's cut because they were following a specific path that didn't include it, because there was multiple sort of branches that they could have gone when they were editing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So here, when Onaka dies at the hands of the deputies, sheriff deputies, Laurie sees it through Babette's eyes. So she does contact her and takes her onto one of those tombs and looks out of this opening, and she gets to see what they do to Onaka, and it's another horrible sequence there.
It's pretty different from the movie too. He's kind of melting almost, before he explodes. And they shot him a bunch of times.
They did. It's more bloody here. Yeah. Yes, of course. It's a lot more bloody.
Even made them even less sympathetic than they were, before, and they were pretty terrible already.
That's right. So that's issue number 3. It's basically where they go to rescue Boone from the jail cell, and Rachel is pretty much the same, I guess. Although when she transforms, she takes on this kind of spectral, like skull-like shape, which I thought adds a little more fear to her character. It's more scary, and of course here I own this page where they actually take off their clothes and they make love in the jail cell.
Yeah.
And then you see, of course, Narcisse saying, "Jesus, he does it better dead than I did alive." Which, it's a nod to the novel there. I always thought that does make a lot of sense. You're storming a police station. You're hard for time. You need to get out of there as quickly as possible, and they just take their sweet time.
Yeah. Well,
no rush.
And
I guess everybody else is out in Midian, so.
There's one weird thing is I always thought that Epic was sort of Marvel's version of like Vertigo, where they could do like more mature titles.
Sure.
And Nightbreed has violence and it has nudity, but for some reason, like, swearing is off limits, because they're like not lying down, my friend, but walking around in my figgin' cell dead. He was like, what is figgin'? Nobody says figgin'.
Yeah, friggin', yeah.
No, they didn't write friggin'. They wrote figgin' with an F-I-G-G-I-N. They wrote friggin' later, but it was like after they'd already used figgin' like 20 times.
I guess that crossed the line that the editor didn't want, so you have to complain to the editor.
Yeah, don't even use friggin'. You have to say figgin', like Fig Newtons.
Yeah, friggin' implies too much, right?
Yeah. So again, this was Daniel Chichester was consulting editor for this series. He was also involved with the Hellraiser series very deeply, and he also wrote for the stories in Hellraiser Epic series. He also wrote Jihad, which we will also get to that. But he was very invested in this whole Clive Barker Hellraiser Nightbreed universe. So you can find his name throughout all sorts of issues.
Yeah. Did you guys ever get any hint from any version of Nightbreed that Lylesburg his leg got broken, and that's why he was taking so long to let the Berserkers out?
No, honestly, I didn't notice that in the script that I was reading, but I don't think it was in Clive Barker's script at all.
Yeah. Yeah. That didn't make it into the movie. He was just slow because he was old, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that's very interesting is that I always bring this character up, and I blame Andrew Furtado and Mark Miller for it, but you might remember a character who has hands coming out of his neck called Mexico.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can spot him in the background on issue 3. So
yeah, that's cool.
I saw him there. He's just such an underappreciated character. The makeup is so amazing, and somehow he never really got any sort of major protagonism in the movie. But you do find him in the making of the Nightbreed Chronicles book. You see a nice big picture of him.
He makes it into movie posters and stuff, but for a long time he wasn't in the movie at all.
Right. So they put him here in the background. You can see him on issue 3 when Laurie's going in through the city underground. But another interesting thing I thought was that Ashbury is a little different, and his motivation for turning against the Sons of the Free, I understand it a little better, because not only does he opposes the storm, the storming of Midian, because in his mind it's consecrated ground, of course, which is a cemetery. He also sees at one point a creature, like kind of a gargoyle, but then it flies away, and he thinks it's an angel. So that's why he thinks that they shouldn't be doing that. He sees things in a different light than everybody else.
Well, and in the Cabal cut, it was this ghostly white figure that launches itself up into the sky, which is really similar to what happened in the book in Cabal.
Mm-hmm. Right,
instead of a gargoyle, but otherwise it's the same.
Mm-hmm. Of course, in the movie, his main opposition is that you're killing children, and he points the gun straight, within a foot of Agriman's face, and that's But obviously, there's a lot more to it. You're you're committing genocide. You're in a cemetery and you're killing things, and it's.
And here
his motivation.
He sees it and he recognizes it as some kind of divinity, and he wants to be a part of that.
Yeah.
Major difference was that Narcisse gets decapitated in the Cabal cut and the director's cut, whereas in the theatrical, he makes it all the way to the end, and not only that, but he's there, back-patting Boone and saying, "Ha, you'll find me and you'll need me."
Yeah.
And even though he gets decapitated in the adaptation, that's not the last we see of Narcisse in this comic book series.
And not only that, in these first six issues that we're talking about today, Narcisse shows up with no real reason behind it. It's kind of like the comic artists were like, "Whoops, well that's the script you gave me. I don't know. We'll just put him back. I don't know."
He's just such a great character, he's such an interesting, colorful character. He's just Nightbreed has to have Narcisse,
Yeah. Well, it did make it more powerful that he died.
Yeah.
It hit home that there was some real danger, fighting with Decker. But Narcisse is a great character.
He certainly is.
Although in this comic series, he says some really kind of creepy, disturbing stuff to Laurie. When Boone's chasing after Decker, he's like, "Oh, you're unconscious. Okay."
In the movie, certainly curve him up a little bit.
Yeah. In the movie, he also has kind of that moment where Laurie's passed out and he starts, caressing her face, and
he says,
and then
he says pretty sweet or something like that. But he doesn't come out and say like, "Oh, guess what I'm going to do to you because you're unconscious."
I was only trying to keep her warm.
Yeah.
So issue number 4 has, of course, the continuation of the attack on Midian, and you see that that Decker is putting on the mask. Another thing that's interesting is that Joyce does survive through the end of the story, because basically his arc is the same as in the Cabal cut and the director's cut, right?
Not the director's cut. They killed him in the director's cut.
Oh, that's right. Just the Cabal cut.
Just the Cabal cut. Yeah, and but he didn't even cut his arm in this comic. It's like he's starting to come over to look at the briefcase, and then the explosion happens. So they never even get to that.
Right, but he does get to do something that we saw in the Cabal cut, which is he saves Babette at one point, and he does pick her up and save her, just like he did in the Cabal cut. So again, this obviously comes from the early drafts of the script, not the final theatrical version.
Yeah.
The fights, but the Berserkers are really well made, I think. You see Lylesburg releasing them with the Midian key, and you see that weird manta ray that flies around. Yeah. It gets more time in this comic book than it does in the actual movie.
Yeah.
You see that manta ray thing eating people's faces off and all that. So.
And from like a close up, it looks like he's got a shark face.
Yeah.
He's like chewing this guy's face off.
Like pulling the skin off of his face.
Hey, do you guys think, because I always had wondered this, the guy that says, "Hey, Moses, watch the pretty light." Does that guy the voice of Optimus Prime?
I don't think so.
He just sounds like it.
Yeah, it does sound similar now that you point it out.
It sounds, I guess, it could be, but I think it would be kind of a waste just to put him in there. Because the actor is definitely not the guy who does Optimus Prime's voice.
Oh,
that is not the same person.
I don't know what he looks like, so
No, he doesn't. He's got a mustache on, and that's not the same guy. But, but you know, it's a funny moment. And I always wondered why Lylesburg just keeps opening his mouth looking at the light instead of just getting out of the way. But he's just confused. He's a confused elderly breed.
With all the ADR that they did, that could have been a British guy, you know, and then they hire a voice actor to do his voice.
Right. Probably. Maybe ADR.
Maybe we'll never know.
Yeah. But, of course, issue 4 has the final confrontation between Boone and Decker, and everything is kind of like the movie except for the part where Decker pulls out a whip, which I thought would have been a badass thing for him to do in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You know, hold a whip, and then, you know, Boone fights back with a femur, which is similar to the movie there as well. And then, of course, he gets called by Baphomet after he wins, and they go down where his transformation happens. And that's pretty much the same as the movie.
Mm-hmm.
There's another scene here where obviously it's made more clear that when Ashbury approaches the bowl that has the blood of Baphomet, you definitely see Baphomet turn to look at him, and then a beam of light comes out. And you can definitely tell that it was Baphomet that caused the blood of Baphomet to splash back onto Ashbury and just, burn him horribly.
Yeah.
That's another thing that they fixed in editing when they were doing the director's cut.
Oh, well, I thought it was really interesting that, well, I mean, I guess the Lylesburg opening up and Boone opening up the chamber for the Berserkers. And the Berserkers jump out and grab Boone by the neck and start strangling him, and he's like, ah! And then Baphomet intervenes and he says, and makes them stop,
mm-hmm.
which is maybe that's better than what happened. The go get 'em boys, you know.
Yeah, about that. I see a lot of people who still comment on Occupy Midian that. At least they took out that cheesy line with the "Go Get 'Em Boys." And I was like, I always liked that line. I don't know why some people hate that line so much. Yeah. And they removed that from the director's cut. You know, it was a request of Clive Barker. He said, well, I'll just take that out. But I felt that was a great line, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm in the minority here.
Well, I think the Midian attack is so kind of somber and I don't know. I mean, especially in the director's cut and the Cabal cut, it's nice to have a little bit of hope, you know.
Yeah.
Like the kid running over and pulling the pin out of the grenade on the guy's belt.
That's a good one, yeah.
Yeah. Or
that's
when they nail that guy into the coffin.
Oh, that's right. They close him in there, right? Yeah.
They push this little kid push this guy in the coffin and nail it shut. He's like, So these 4 issues are basically the main film, and the ending of it is pretty much like you would see in the director's cut, where you get Laurie, the sequence with them talking, and Laurie says, you know, I don't want you to leave, and he says, I don't belong here, I belong to the breed now, and then she grabs that knife that she got from Decker, and she uses it, and a very, very well done sequential art sequence here.
Mm-hmm.
I really like those last pages and the despair that you can see in Boone's face. And ultimately, they're kissing in the moonlight, and it's just a beautiful page there. It's wonderful.
Yeah, really, really, really mirrors what happens in the Cabal cut and the director's cut.
Mm-hmm.
And the last page has Rachel and Babette saying, if not tonight, then tomorrow on the next wind. Yeah. And then the story of the Nightbreed will continue.
Yeah.
And this time it was true. Yeah, and it does. It does. So we'll get into that one, like issue number 5. So what do you guys think about that one?
It's a little off.
You don't like the opening?
I like it, but the dialogue seems a bit off, a bit more like pulpy.
Uh-huh.
And it just doesn't jive. It, like going from that directly to issue 5, from the previous 4, it just seems a bit odd. I like the artwork.
It's a little more comic book style, right?
Yeah. It's not as narrative as the first 4 issues were. Like, this is clearly, a standalone thing. I think it's actually is it the prequel leading up to? Is this
issue
one
number
the
5?
Prelude? Yeah, Prelude. It's the Prelude.
Yeah, the Blasphemers Prelude, scattering the seeds of damnation.
Yeah. And I like the story, and I like where it goes, but some of the odd humor choices and, like, the clothing, like the breed boy jacket, I don't know. Some of it's just a little too pulpy for me at times.
So for those of you out there who haven't found this yet, so issue number 5 does introduce new characters. And this time they list Clive Barker as creator and consultant, and Daniel Chichester was the writer. So they also changed the artists. So in this one, we have Jackson Geist doing the pencils and Alfred Ramirez doing the inks. I don't mind that. I actually also like this. But like you were saying, it's true. This became more like a Marvel comic book with like these weird where the breed, these blasphemers, I guess you could call them that. They're like random monsters that you would see in like a Marvel comic.
Or like Dungeons and Dragons or something.
Right.
And their story arc is like, now that we're out of Midian, we can just eat people. And at first they're a little hesitant, but then they kind of go nuts. And then they're like, well, Cabal's not going to like this. And what if he puts Baphomet back together? Then they're gonna get really upset with us, and they're like, well, then I guess we better go kill Cabal. And
sure.
And there was one point where this little Nightbreed Spider Baby brings that up, and he's like, yeah, I don't want to hear that kind of negativity or whatever. Throws him out the window and runs him over with the truck.
With a truck, yeah.
Oh, God.
It just hit me that the upcoming book that was announced in Amazon not too long ago that we made an article about, wasn't it called Spider Baby?
Oh, yeah, I think you're right.
Well, what's the title of that movie? It's, let me just look that up real quick.
What movie are we talking about?
No, the next book that's going to come out from Clive Barker.
Scare Baby.
Scare Baby.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. So it's not Spider Baby. Yeah, okay. It just kind of resonated there, and I thought there was a connection, but probably not. And these new characters, they're called, so you have Oral, which is my favorite. Oral is this guy. He looks like a normal, oldish looking guy, but he doesn't have any teeth. And so his gimmick is that he can use anything for teeth. His face is like putty. It kind of stretches out. And so he can put whatever he wants, stick it up his gums, and use them as teeth. And they use this character to such great results. I mean, there's so much great scenes in this where they're going to feed on human flesh, and he doesn't have teeth. So, Mulciber, or whatever his name is, just hands him over a bunch of little jagged rocks and says, well, you can use these for molars and these for incisives. And he just gives him this weird-looking smile, and it's like, oh, my God, that's so good.
Yeah, when they reveal his mouth, that looks really good.
Right? Yeah. And the next few issues, they did this series of covers where they used these characters, Oral, Dagon, Mulciber, Aiello, Piglet.
Yeah.
And they did standalone covers for them. And it's a great introduction to the characters, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mulciber is kind of like the leader of the pack. He's like the the big burly, like, you know.
Looks like a vulture, sort of, yeah.
Yeah, he's kind of bird looking. He's like if a Skeksis had gone on steroids,
right.
you know, and he got all muscled up. That's kind of what it looks like. And, of course, you got Piglets, who's obviously kind of like a comedy relief. He's this little Nightbreed guy who looks like a pig that can speak.
Yeah.
And Aiello is kind of the making up for not having Shuna Sassy in the adaptation. And she's this sexy-looking girl who dresses in nothing but a sheet. So, and she's also kind of like an angel figurine. She can fly, and she's got, you know, these like bird-like eyes. And so,
she looks like she's from Gem and the Holograms.
Oh, yeah. She looks like she's one of the misfits, right? She's like a misfit.
So I just realized when I was telling you guys about how I didn't like the story and the art and everything, I wasn't looking at that issue. I was referring to because I'm reading mine through Comixology, the new re-release that they did, and there's a short story before issue 5 called "Put a Nightbreed in Your Tank."
Okay.
Oh,
I think that's one of the ones that was released in the Epic comics, the Epic #1 or Epic #2. Does it involve Kinski, Peloquin, and Boone driving around?
Okay. Yeah, with the old guys at the gas station.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, that's the one in Epic #2.
Okay. I have a page from that one as well. The page where there's a car crash and you see like Peloquin going through the glass, I think. I have that page, the original one. So, right. So that was not... Yeah, I see what you mean. They must have done that because it kind of like ties in things, I guess. I don't know. I thought it was a pretty standalone kind of prelude there, but they must have put it in for completeness sake. No, I'm talking about the #5 issue.
Yeah, so the #5 issue I do like. That little short story I did not enjoy. Well, I liked the ending to it, but I didn't like the campy humor and the punk rock references and stuff. It was just a little odd.
It is a little, it's a little odd. That's why it didn't come out in the actual series. It just came out as like the standalone anthology kind of thing with other stories.
Well, and it's like 2 years after this.
Right, 92,
Gotcha.
right?
Yeah.
Because this issue #5, I think, came out in September of 1990, which means we're still close to the release of the movie.
Yeah.
I think that might be bad placement from Comixology or whoever decided to put that there.
Yeah, this is the re-release that Boom did.
Yeah. I think that they should have looked at the date on that and tried to fit it in, more chronologically.
You're talking about the Nightbreed archive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, another thing to note in issue #5 is that there's another... the action goes from that group of Nightbreed that wants to eat people. It moves on to this farmer out in a remote place somewhere where he finds out someone's staying in his little cottage there that's on his property. And he goes in and he finds this female Nightbreed. And, he says, well, do you want to pay for staying here? And she kind of starts dancing and stripping. But then he notices she has a bag, and he wants to see what's in the bag. And when he opens it, it's Baphomet's head, which, obviously that immediately is like, oh, you want to see? You want to see human? Yeah. And then it blasts the guy's mind with this vision of basically kind of a small recap of what happened in the movie.
Yeah.
How the Breed were pursued and, the attack on Midian, everything's burning. And then in the middle of all this, you see a giant headstone half fallen on its side. It says, "Rest in peace, Clive Barker."
Oh, I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it says right there. Oh. And apparently died in 1956. Obviously, that's 40 years after he was born. So,
okay.
Yeah, but I thought that was an interesting thing. You find this kind of stuff in all sorts of adaptations, especially like the old graphic novel adaptations of his books of blood stories. Sometimes you find, like the Adrian Jack, you're seeing this part where they're talking about Jack Polo, and then there's all this like sequence of pictures of Jack Polo's life. And in one of those, there's like a little picture of Clive Barker just there in the background. You see stuff like that pop up every once in a while. So, But that gives us a little recap, and then they go into another storyline plot where these guys are running away from this drug deal gone bad, but they're being chased by something. Mm-hmm. And it turns out they're being chased by Boone, Kinski, and basically, and Laurie. Okay.
Yeah.
So now Laurie is also kind of like a member of the Nightbreed, and they're looking for other members of the Nightbreed. And the first place they're going to go is this witch called Nicknaven, because she never was part of Midian, but she may know where other people are.
Yeah.
So,
that's her granddaughter Tater.
Yeah. I like this character. Yeah. Further up, they're going to introduce really weird characters like Nostradamus or something, or Paracelsus or whatever his name was. And some of those I didn't care too much about. But Nicknaven is pretty funny because she's going to turn into this really weird, quirky character. And she has a detachable head, which is always nice.
Yeah. Yeah, I liked her. I liked this storyline too, and it was interesting to see where it would go. The only thing I didn't like was I didn't like Boone's sort of whininess, like, stop calling me Cabal. Why is everybody bugging me all the time?
He does seem to have a reluctance about his role. Yeah. I guess he doesn't like the weight of the responsibility being put on his shoulders, and he's, he can feel the pressure because he knows that everybody from Midian is out there scattered, and he wants to make right, but at the same time, it's taken over his life,
And, of course, Kinski kicks the door in on his hotel when he's having sex with Laurie. For no reason. I mean, they could have just not.
That's issue number 6. Yeah, so that's the one with the Piglet cover. Yeah. I love that cover. It's just so cool. That's Brett Blevin's cover. And he also does the art on the inside. Again, this is written by Dan Chichester, and the artist changes again. It's Brett Blevins this time on issue 6. Well, usually when a comic book keeps changing the artists, that's really not a good sign. I guess here they were still looking for the visual identity of the comic, I would say.
Did you notice that the hotel they were staying in was called the C-Tab Motel, which is just Bates backwards?
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That is funny. That is really, really funny.
Why is every male human character in the comic book like some kind of pervert?
That's a good point. This one really brings that point home because the guy from the motel where they're staying in this issue, he tries to harass Laurie, and of course that doesn't go very well.
And it's always Laurie. Poor Laurie.
Yeah. I know. Yeah. And then there's 3 guys at a truck stop talking, and this reminds me of the 3 characters from South Park. I don't know if you guys remember an episode where everybody that walks into that diner, Skeeter has to be like, we don't take kindly to people like you around here. Now, Skeeter, they're not doing anything wrong. These are kind of like that. But then, of course, the Blasphemers come into this diner, and they're hungry, so they want to get some barbecue.
Yes.
And they look great when they transform, when they come storming in. That's a great artwork. And even at the beginning, when the little girl has like the tentacles coming out.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The artwork on this one I really, really liked.
Yeah, because there's this guy who you can tell he's when he's introduced, he's actually getting rid of his latest victim. Mm-hmm. And you can hear in the radio the car says, a massive manhunt is currently underway to recapture the man authorities have categorized as the Fiend. Yeah. So, and he just killed a woman, and he's putting the car into a few bushes, and then he goes through the woods and he finds that little girl. And this is kind of like a reversal of the Frankenstein or the monster that meets the little kid in the woods, where she's throwing flowers onto the water.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and he's like, see, the flowers float. Do you like it? It's like, yeah. Let me teach you one of my games. And boing! All of a sudden, it's like she turns into this giant thing-like monster. Yeah. Which, like David was saying, that's a great splash page right there.
Yeah, it really is.
I like how when she transforms into that huge thing-like monster, her eyes still have the cute little eyelashes, you know? Yeah. She's a girl. It's a girl monster.
Yeah.
You know, she has to have cute eyelashes.
Yeah, I think it was also funny the really poorly veiled way that these guys go into the diner. Like, who would ever believe that if you just put a hoodie on Dagon, that now he looks like a human? He's a crab.
Yeah. That's the artifices of comic books. You know, they always. They have a certain structure and certain tropes that are characteristic to comic books. Like, who else would believe that? Oh, Superman and Clark Kent don't look the same because one of them has a curl and uses glasses. I mean, come on. Like Superman doesn't even have a cowl or a mask. I mean, everybody could tell he's Clark Kent. But somehow we just never go through with that. You just say, well, we'll just suspend our disbelief. So, but yeah, the reveal of the monsters here is really good. And I can't help but notice that they changed the character again. Aiello. In issue number 5, she had white hair, and here she has red hair now. And she's a little different. Her face looks more angular.
Yeah, she looks more punk, like, I guess, in issue 6. And in issue 5, she looked more like angelic, I guess.
And they simplified the color scheme of Mulciber. Now he's just green.
Oh, yeah.
Mm-hmm. No more yellow and purple or whatever they were using for Mulciber. Yeah. But I like the way they simplify them. It made them look a little more villainy.
Yeah, they definitely look more like monsters, and like I said earlier, less Dungeons and Dragons like.
Yeah. And and that when they start hacking and slashing, it's again Piglet as the good comic relief that he is. He goes like, "I'm into fast food, McRib," and he just rips a guy's rib off. And then one of the guys in the diner runs away. Got to hit the road, and it's like, "Can somebody say crackers?" He's like, "Crackers, the salty kind?" And they totally made a joke about that. It's great. It's great. And
in this issue number 6 is when Narcisse comes back, and it's just kind of like, "Hey guys," there's no explanation.
Yeah. And Oral is such a great character in this. And again, just because it's a comic and they have to make jokes, they have to do the little quirky one-liners. And he says, "I believe I'm more partial to the chef du jour," when he's getting ready. He's getting ready to eat the chef of the diner, and then he just sticks all these like butcher knives into his mouth and turns them into his teeth.
Doesn't that mean chef of the day?
Yes, it does. And then when he gets shot at, he says, "Goodness, if that's the kind of attitude you take towards your patrons, I wouldn't be expecting a tip." Yeah. Just great stuff all around. I mean, tropey, sure, cheesy, okay, but it's part of the comic book mystique, I guess.
Well, and it took 2 issues for us to kind of get to, okay, so how is this related to Boone, and why are these characters, how are we going to have a conflict between Cabal and these characters? And it's like, this is why. It's because they're breaking the law, and now they don't want Boone to restore Baphomet anymore because they don't want the law.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then Oral brings up the good point that they're already damned. I mean, but you know what? Then again, this is something that people forgive a lot to people like Peliquin. But Peliquin was willing to break the law. If Boone hadn't run away, he would have been eaten by Peliquin, maybe even Kinski.
Yeah.
So they did break the law every once in a while, I would say.
Yeah, these guys are taking it really seriously, I guess. I don't know.
So, like you said, the amazing part of this comic is when they bring Narcisse back.
Yeah.
And
surprise, he's there.
No explanation. Yeah, no explanation at all. Yeah. I guess after they saw the movie, this is my hypothetical explanation is that after they saw the movie, they were like, "Oh, I guess we adapted the first 4 issues from a script, but it turns out that Narcisse survived the movie, so I guess we'll have to put him in the comic now." Yeah. And nobody bat an eyelash about it, even though Decker cut his head off. So I guess that's the only explanation.
My memory is that in later issues there are letters where people ask that, and they kept on saying, "Yeah, well, there's an explanation and we'll get to it," but they never did.
Yeah.
But we'll see when we get there. I think these issues that we have now don't have any letters in them yet, but
I can't help but wonder that when they introduced Nicknaven, she's a witch that can take off her head and put it right back. Mm-hmm. And she will switch bodies at one point as well.
Yeah.
So I'm just wondering if they did that as a way to tell people that, look, see, Breed can have their head cut off, but they can still survive.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I'd always kind of wondered if it had something to do with her. You know, if she helped him somehow, but who knows?
Right. So a pretty cool series here. I really like this series. Too bad it got cut short before Nicholas Vince got a chance to take it to more interesting places. But I guess that's it's not going anywhere. So anytime you want to look at this, go get the Nightbreed archive, and you'll be able to read the whole thing.
Yeah. Well, and coming up soon after this one, I think we're probably going to be taking a little bit of a hiatus just because we have some other things that we need to work on. There's one sort of secret project we're doing with Seraphim, but then there's also we really need to get some stuff done on. You're working on the Hellraiser 4 documentary, and I'm trying to get some interviews
transcribed. Yeah. For the book that's going to come out, because it's going to come out this year. You're actually transcribing an interview with Simon Benford?
Yeah, that was our episode number 3, so our questions are kind of painful to listen to.
As usual, I guess, you know, David, you have a podcast. I guess 5 years from now, you're probably going to listen to some of your early episodes and be like, I wish I had done some things differently.
Yeah, I'll cringe for sure.
I never listen to my old episodes. The only time I would listen to another episode is when I'm editing it, and that's it. I usually never go back to listen to them because it's
in the same way.
Yeah. Whatever's out there is out there, you know.
I listen when I'm editing, and then I'm trying to also listen to them in order from iTunes just because I want to hear what I want to hear what everybody else hears. And actually, it's actually kind of fun to listen to old episodes because I find myself, I start talking to you. Like, you'll be talking for a little while, and then I forget that I'm not in the podcast, and I'll start responding. Like, oh, wait a minute. This is
I totally get that.
Yeah.
I totally get that. And sometimes I'd be editing an episode and I would listen to you say something and then I'll mutter something in reply and it's exactly the same thing I say in the recording. And it's like, that's how my brain works, I guess. You know, it's just so, yeah. So cool. Stay tuned with us for more future episodes about Nightbreed comics, hopefully with David. And thanks for listening.
And I think we also want to talk about Clive Barker's Next Testament, the novel, and we'll want to talk about Sacrament, and we were also thinking of Stephen Jones, right, to talk about the A to Z of horror.
That's right. We need to get in touch with him. He's shown some interest a couple of times. Every time we post something on our page about A through Z of horror, usually we'll get a comment from Stephen Jones saying, "Oh, remind me one day to talk to you about this book." So I guess that's nice. Time for us to remind him about that book.
Yeah. And the TV series, too.
Yeah. Find out if there are more segments done for that, because Phil and Sarah have this description there that says that maybe there were other segments screened on German television or something that we never saw on the BBC. And, you know, if that's true, then who has that? Where is that? Is that real? I guess we have to start contacting German audience members and see if they ever heard about that.
Yeah.
Send us a line. Send us feedback. Tell us what you got in your country about Clive Barker.
Yeah. It would be interesting to see if there's any kind of... I mean, they're probably not on YouTube, but...
I do remember visiting Germany a few times, 4 or 5 times, and every time I was there, I would find myself in these giant bookstores, and I would always look for, invariably, that's what I do when I'm in a bookstore. First thing, I go check to see what Clive Barker books they have. And then I would find all these amazing, like, audio books of Clive Barker and giant, you know, amazing covers of Clive Barker's books. And I'm like, oh, it's all in German, and I can't speak German. So it kind of takes away that desire to buy it because, like, I'm never going to be able to read this.
Yeah.
But, you know.
If you bought those, that would be a sickness.
Some countries out there have a lot of, like Japan has some great Aberrat covers and stuff like that. So
yeah.
Leave that to the completists.
Exactly. You could have it look like Clive Barker had to buy an entire house for that stuff.
Yeah, man, I saw the other day this retired 65-year-old Japanese police officer who has a fascination for Hello Kitty. He has like 5,000 pieces in his collection.
Oh,
he shows a whole room full of the same looking, the exact same looking Hello Kitty images.
What are there, like 3 characters, right? There's the frog Keroppi, and there's Hello Kitty, and I don't know. There's not that many.
I have absolutely no idea. I've never got into Hello Kitty. All I know is the original character. That's it. So, yeah, there's probably a lot of people out there. Marcus, one of our other collaborators, he has an enormous collection of Clive Barker stuff as well. So
Yeah. The collection I don't understand is those Funko Pop things. Because they all look exactly the same. So if you had a big wall of those and nobody ever takes them out of the box, apparently, then they would all look exactly the same with those big googly eyes and flat face and no nose.
Yeah, I do have a Hellraiser 3 Pinhead one, though. It's nice to have him here next to me in the desk. I just like having a little Pinhead that I can just...
Is it out of the box?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I don't.
That's better. Yeah.
I don't care about that. Every time even the Nika figurines, the Hellraiser ones, I usually would just take them out of the box, man.
I'm the same way. That's why I get them.
Yeah.
Yeah. I keep the box, though. I mean, sometimes I try to rip it just enough just so I can pull out the figurine and put it, But apart from that, I mean, there's figurines I don't even have the box for anymore.
The only thing I ever did that with is the Jump Tribe.
Right.
Yeah, just because they are so rare, and I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll take them out sometime, but they actually stand up better in the box, so...
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a fun episode about the Nightbreed comic books, and the quality is going to go somewhat down the hill after a certain point, but there was also a lot of stuff that they expanded on this universe, and I think some stuff was really, really visionary. Too bad that they didn't have the time and the money to pursue that further, but it's definitely going to go up there, and then it's going to go downhill, like to the point where it's like there were some comic books near the end where they were just changing the artist almost every issue. It's just you could tell that they just didn't know what to do with it. That's too bad. All right. Thanks for joining us.
A quick note here, at the time that we recorded this, it was a secret, but now we've announced that the Nightbreed Cabal cut is being released, and that secret project we were talking about is our audio commentary that we're working on for that. So that's what it is, and this podcast, having no beginning, will have no end. You can find the show notes for this episode as well as lots of news and features at www.clivebarkercast.com. Leave comments there or get them directly into the podcast by clicking the Send Voicemail tab on the right. Please follow us on Twitter at BarkerCast or at Occupy Midian, like us on Facebook, and join the Occupy Midian Facebook group. You can listen on the site or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, TuneIn, Pocket Cast, Google Play, and Double Twist. Look for our apps in the iTunes Store or Google Play Store. Subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. Please take a couple of minutes to leave us a review on iTunes. It means the world to us and helps us spread the word about Clive Barker. The Clive Barker Podcast, or BarkerCast, is an independent editorial fan site and podcast that is not affiliated with or under contract by Clive Barker or Seraphim Films. This is a labor of love by the fans for the fans.
Thanks for listening.